the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday, October 13th. We had a problem with video a minute ago. Restarted the computer. It looks like it's okay now. We'll see if it holds. Go let everybody know that we're on now, that they didn't miss anything, to come and join us. Today is the day, October 13th. Today is the day that hostages were released in Israel. 20 male hostages. These are the last living hostages were released. So it is very much a joyous day in Israel, a day of celebration. I don't know if you got to watch the videos, but the videos were incredibly emotional. You know, these hostages are being in inhumane conditions, just unbelievably evil, horrible conditions for 2 years now. They've been tortured. They've not known if they'll have food. They've not known if they would survive and they would live. And they were finally released today as part of the agreement between Israel, Hamas, Arab states, and the United States around these hostages. So. First, congratulations to everybody who's been, who was a hostage and who's free now. I mean, a huge amount of sympathy. My nephew's best friend was among those released today, and nobody. There's no family in Israel that was not touched by the hostage situation, whether these 20 or the overall 250 that were taken. Of course, there's still 28 bodies. I think 4 of them were released, but there's still many bodies that have not been released. And families are still hopeful to get the bodies of their loved ones and be able to bury them properly. But, you know, just think of the horror of what it must be like as a parent to have your child held hostage for 2 years, not knowing if you'll ever see them, knowing the pain and anguish that they are going through, living with that every day and being completely helpless and not being able to help them. So, this reunion is incredibly joyous and should be celebrated, and it is a good thing. And that is good. It's also, you have to add, this is also the only really card that Hamas had to prevent Israel from completely annihilating them and completely destroying them. Israel's hands were tied because it did not want to put in danger these hostages. So, for example, there's still dozens of miles of tunnels in Gaza that Hamas has used, that Hamas was hiding, and Israel was not bombing those tunnels, was not destroying those tunnels, out of fear that the hostages were being kept inside of them. Indeed, I think Israeli intelligence knew mostly where the hostages were actually being kept. And it was fear of harm to them that prevented Israeli forces from going to certain places, bombing certain locations, and destroying Hamas infrastructure. Now that's gone. Israel has no limitations in what it can do. The only limitation, of course, now is the United States. That is, it's the deal that Israel signed that is going to be restrictive in terms of what it can do and what it ultimately will do. So Israel should go in tomorrow and finish the job and clean it up and start with a massive bombing campaign to destroy every piece of infrastructure that Hamas has, to destroy, in particularly the tunnels, and every tunnel entry point that Israel knows of should be immediately destroyed. And then, once it's much, much safer to enter Gaza, have the ground troops enter, because at that point Hamas won't be able to hide in the tunnels. That won't happen tomorrow because Israel has made a deal, and that deal they're supposed to now start negotiating with Hamas about disarming Hamas and about, I don't know, an international peacekeeping force and about some board of peace that Trump is going to be chairman of that board. So Israel is going to be now in negotiations. They will, one assumes at some point Hamas won't disarm, won't leave, and Israel will have to act. And then the question is, will the United States give it a green light to act or not? I don't know. I mean, Trump has been more pro-Israel to date than I expected, not as pro-Israel as I would like, but more pro-Israel than I expected. Will he continue to be so even now that he's basically declared peace, the greatest peace in the Middle East for 3,000 years? Is he willing to allow Israel to go back into war when necessary? Of course, the alternative is that Israel deals with Hamas and Gaza the same way is dealing with Hezbollah in Lebanon. There is a ceasefire deal in Lebanon. Part of that deal excludes Hezbollah from trying to reestablish positions in southern Lebanon. And what happens is that every time Israel identifies an effort by Hezbollah to do anything in the south of Lebanon, they go in, they from the air destroy that capability, whether it is killing Hezbollah leadership in southern Lebanon, or whether it's destroying, just the other day, 2 days ago, they destroyed tens of millions of dollars of earth-moving equipment because they argued that earth-moving equipment was being used by Hezbollah to rebuild its tunnels, its bases in southern Lebanon. They just destroyed all this equipment. So Israel is basically in Lebanon on the position of, status quo, but if you deviate from the status quo, we bomb you. And it could very well be that would be Israel's position with regard to Gaza. We're going to stay in 53% of the Gaza Strip, which is what they have occupation over right now. And any form of aggression, any indication that Hamas is rearming itself, we will bomb you. We won't come in. We won't go in. We will bomb you. We're not going to try to destroy all the tunnels, but we will bomb any attempt to advance. This, of course, is not ideal because it does not involve the complete and utter destruction of Hamas. But it will provide Israel with security, and it will provide Israel with security for many, many, many years to come. So we probably won't get my outcome, although who knows? But then that's been true from the beginning. My preferred outcome is one that has not been embraced by Israel or by the United States. But I think Israel overall, now that the hostages are returned, is in a much, much, much better strategic position. It is also in a much, much better, defense position. That is, think about it. The threats to Israel have been diminished dramatically. Israel is in a far better position right now, even with the release of all the terrorists that it released today. We'll get to that in a minute. It is basically, eliminated for now, at least, the threat that Hezbollah poses. And people forget, just a year and a half ago, Hezbollah posed the largest, most significant existential threat to Israel. It had tens of thousands of missiles that could be deployed very, very quickly and launched into Israel, particularly into northern Israel. And yet Israel has destroyed that capability, destroyed the entire military leadership, and destroyed their capability to launch those missiles. Many of the missiles are gone, don't exist. And it has now the capability of identifying any movement of those missiles, and it is willing to deploy its air force in order to deal with that. So Hezbollah in the north has been, I wouldn't say eradicated, it's still there, it's still a threat, and if Israel lowers its guard even a little bit, it will resurrect itself. But it's a diminished threat. One of the reasons it's diminished is that its supply route from Iran to Lebanon is basically gone. A year and a half ago, you could get in a car in Tehran and drive to Beirut. And you could drive delivering any form of weapon system, money, anything like that to the Hezbollah. Today, Lebanon, the Lebanese government, the Lebanese army is hostile to Hezbollah and hostile to people helping Hezbollah. But much more important is Syria has fallen. Syria is now under the leadership of a government hostile to Iran, hostile to the Shiites, hostile to Hezbollah. They've kicked out all the Iranian-affiliated groups from Syria. Israel, at the same time, has basically eliminated any military capabilities this new Syrian regime has. They're gone. And therefore, there is no way to deliver material, to deliver weapons, to deliver stuff. I mean, you can still smuggle it, but there's no big, easy highway to deliver all this stuff to Hezbollah. So Hezbollah's losses are losses. They're gone. Of course, the 12-day war with Iran basically showed Iran to be a paper tiger. It also showed Iran to be incapable of matching Israel militarily. It showed Iran on the precipice of failure. Israel has basically eliminated much of the ballistic missile threat that Iran posed, although the Russians and the Chinese might resurrect that threat. And together with the United States, eliminated much of the nuclear program, at least for months, if not years. So Iran is no longer a strategic threat to Israel, or at least not in the short to medium term. And even the Iranian forces in Iraq have been dwindled and have a lot less impact. The Houthis in Yemen have been weakened dramatically and have far less capabilities than they used to. It's much more difficult for them to get arms from the Iranians. The Iranians now, of course, have a lot less money and a lot less capabilities to provide them. And finally, Hamas itself. Hamas is a shadow of its old self. It used to have thousands, if not tens of thousands, of missiles that they could deploy against Israel. Those stockpiles are all, or almost all of them, once in a while you find a missile here or there, being destroyed. They had offensive weapons that do not exist anymore. Tens of thousands of their fighters have been killed. The Gazan population itself is less than enthusiastic about them. We'll get to that in a minute. Hamas is just much, much weaker, and it only controls 47% of Gaza. Israel controls all the strategic locations, primarily the most important strategic location, that is the border with Egypt, where almost all the weapons were smuggled in from. Hamas is not going to be getting money from Qatar or from Iran anytime soon. The Israeli government is not going to allow that. It's dramatically, night and day, weakened from where it was. So we really do have a situation where Israel today is dramatically stronger, strategically and militarily, than it was October 6, 2023. It is safer. It is probably the safest Israel has been, I don't know, in a very, very long time, maybe since the 1980s. The threats that still exist, of course, are terrorist threats, which will continue, primarily from the West Bank, where they still have access into Israel. But that's about it. That's about it. You know, there were text exchanges between people in Gaza and people in the West Bank. And the people in the West Bank were angry with the people in Gaza. How could you let the hostages go? Why did you release them? It was the only cause you had. What are you doing? You're betraying the Palestinian cause. Just to give you a sense of how, pro-peace the Palestinians in the West Bank are. And the Gazans basically replied to them, yeah, you take hostages. We've suffered enough for these hostages. You take them. Well, I mean, that is the reality. the reality is today that the biggest threat to Israel right now, the biggest threat to Israelis right now, is the risk of hostage taking. In Israel, in the West Bank, but anyway, in Venezuela, anywhere where the local government would facilitate you hiding. So certain places at Latin America, maybe certain places in Asia, I don't know. There are not a lot of places where this is true. But hostage taking has been the most productive thing the Palestinians have done for their cause, if you will. And the reason for that is that while 20 Israeli hostages were released today, 250 murderers were released from Israeli prisons, 250 terrorists, and 1,700 Gazans who had been arrested during the war. Probably members of Hamas, probably, people engaged in hostile activities towards Israel. So members of Hamas. So we're talking about 2,000 people released, 2,000 terrorists released in exchange for 20 live Israelis and 28 bodies. We'll see if the bodies actually ultimately get released. That is a heavy cost. And one that I think Israel needs to remedy. Israel needs to change its policy. The policy needs to go back to the old days of Entebbe in the 1970s, where Israel basically policy was, we do not negotiate with terrorists. It doesn't matter where. It doesn't matter how bad they are. It doesn't matter who they're threatening. We do not negotiate with terrorists. Now, that commitment is long past. I mean, really, once you negotiated a deal with Yasser Arafat at Oslo, you can't claim the moral high ground of not negotiating with terrorists anymore. You just negotiated with an arch-terrorist, a peace deal. And of course, Israel's negotiated with Hamas and negotiated with the PLO over and over and over again over the years, Islamic Jihad. Israel needs to rediscover the principle. We don't negotiate with terrorists. That would mean you do not release prisoners in order to get hostages. You engage in military operations to try to free the hostages, realizing the risk that they could be killed. But you do not engage in negotiations. You do not release terrorists in order to get your people back. Now, that's going to be very difficult for Israel, given the history of releasing terrorists. The 250 terrorists were all murderers, blood on their hands, who had been, found guilty in a court of law. I think in order not to succumb in the future to the temptation of releasing murderers, I think Israel needs to institute a death penalty for terrorists. It needs to execute them, catch them, put them on trial, and if they're found guilty beyond reasonable doubt, hang them, shoot them, electric chair them, whatever, but kill them. And therefore they cannot, at that point, become pawns in an exchange. That is one of the things they could do to relieve the pressure. The other is to have a commitment and maybe even pass legislation committing Israel never to releasing terrorists again in exchange for hostages. So Israel will pay a price for this. Have no doubt that Israel in the future, there will be hostages taken. They will pay a price for this. And there will be a reckoning. But overall, you have to recognize, even if this is the end of the war, that Israel today is in a far, far, far better situation than it was 2 years ago. That Israel today is more secure and stronger than it ever has been. Yes, there are a lot of countries in Europe that don't like Israel right now, but that'll pass. Winners are forgiven. And, once it is not politically expedient to throw Israel under the bus because it's not a hot issue anymore, these governments will forget about these issues. The bigger issue and the bigger challenge is primarily outside of Israel, and that is the issue and the challenge that Western countries face. What do you do with this pro-Islamist, pro-Hamas, anti-Western civilization, viciously anti-Western civilization, movement, culture that exists out there among so many young people? Put aside the Muslims, so many young people in the West, and that is a real reckoning, because right now that is expressed through pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas, anti-West demonstrations and activism and so on. But 5 years from now, it'll be expressed in a different way, or even 3 months from now, it might be expressed in a different way. The reality is, the shocking, disgusting, horrific, sad reality is that we are educating millions of young Westerners, Americans, Europeans, to hate their own civilization, to hate their own countries, to hate the West. We are educating them to become nihilists. And that cannot end well. That cannot end well. This is the situation we face, and that is the challenge of dealing with all those kids. That is the real challenge, and it's in our educational institutions. And there's no quick, easy remedy for this. There's no shortcuts. There's no easy way to deal with this. Let's see. What else did I want to say? Yeah. So again, I'll end this segment just by congratulating the families and the released hostages and their families. Oh, I did want to say this. Yeah. Dave Smith. You all know Dave Smith, the comedian who thinks he knows something about the Middle East. And who goes around debating everybody on the Middle East as if he's some kind of expert. He is a nihilist who has motivated by hatred and, I think, ignorance, and being an advocate of a pseudo-historian, Scott Thornton, and basically committed to an anti-Israeli, anti-really Western civilization position, as to some extent all anarchists are, but his is particularly vicious, nasty, disgusting, and horrible, and which is what he is. And today he reaffirmed his moral equivocation, the fact that he is a hack, and just a disgusting, just generally a disgusting human being who lies and deceives and makes stuff up in order to advocate, in order to convince himself, maybe to rationalize his own irrational, anti-Western, disgusting positions. This is what he wrote. It's great that the ceasefire has held for a few days and hostage swaps are taking place. Here, Dave Smith is equating 20 young men who were taking hostage. Maybe he can pretend that they're all soldiers, but they're not. Some of them are not soldiers. Some of them were taken to Nova at the music festival, just out there partying. Now, in Israel, every male is a soldier, so you could argue that. But taken hostage, After, by the way, watching these monsters slaughter and butcher and rape and torture their friends, and then having to be in horrific conditions for 400 and something, not for 400 and something, 700, for over 2 years. And he is treating them as the same, hostage swap, as murdering terrorists, subhuman beings who planned and executed, for others, obviously because they're still alive, suicide bombings in Israel, who did shooting attacks on Israeli civilians, who murdered Israelis left and right. They were all hostages. Israel doesn't have a system of justice that actually tried them, prosecuted them, put them in jail. Oh, no. And jails. And, of course, not the same as tunnels. I mean, he equivocates between the two. And then he says, oh, no, what I meant was the 1,700 people. 1,700 people who were taken by the IDF. Almost all of them Hamas operatives who surrendered or who were captured alive. Israel did not torture them. They held them in detention. They're not hostages. They're prisoners of war. Hostages? But this is exactly the horrible moral equivocation. This is exactly the irrationality and the hostility that Dave has to anything Israeli. I mean, he is a real piece of work. I mean, I encourage you to watch the debate that he did with Coleman. What's his name? Coleman something. Yeah, I mean, but all his debates. Dave is just a dishonest hack. A dishonest hack. So, yes, I just wanted to mention that. Coleman Hughes, thank you, Coleman Hughes. Who's very good, who did a really good job, and stayed surprisingly calm, much calmer than I could have stayed with a lying nihilist like Dave Smith. So I want to say something about Hamas as well. So Hamas has come out of their tunnels. Amazing, right? Throughout the war, Hamas is in civilian clothes. They hide their weapons. They sneak in and out. You can't differentiate them from the civilian population, or very difficult to. As soon as there's a ceasefire, they put on their uniforms, they take out their guns, and they start patrolling the streets because they know they are safe. Hamas has been out in the streets the last couple of days. And of course, what is its first order of business? It's to go after anybody who expressed any criticism of Hamas itself. They're out in the street executing people. It's on video. It's available. Hamas is executing dozens of people. There are certain families, tribes within Gaza, who are being vocal about their anti-Hamas sentiments. There have been tribes that have tried to keep the food and not allowed the food to go into Hamas's hands. Hamas today went into those neighborhoods, went into the family homes, killed everybody, men, women, children. There's a massive amount of murdering going on right now in the Gaza Strip. Gazans killing Gazans, Muslim killing Muslims, Palestinians killing Palestinians, Hamas killing everybody they think might be in opposition to their rule. This is not a group that is ready to disarm. This is not a group ready to give up control of Gaza. This is not a group that is ready to actually abide by the peace deal. They're murdering thugs. They're monsters. And they should be destroyed completely and thoroughly. Anyway, one interesting phenomena is Nobody is out demonstrating against the killing of Palestinians. Nobody is out there demonstrating against Hamas in favor of the poor Palestinians who are being slaughtered by them. You know, a lot of Western, just to give you another sense of the craziness, a lot of Western channels, media outlets are being showing videos of Gazans celebrating the ceasefire. And they've been doing it as, look, the Gazans are celebrating peace. And what they're not translating for you is what the Gazans are yelling as they celebrate. What they're not translating for you is the fact that the Gazans are yelling pro-Hamas slogans. That they're talking about being eager to resume hostile actions against Israel, to repeating October 7th many, many times. These are the Gazans who were supposedly being genocided. These were the Gazans who supposedly were starving. They all look pretty healthy, by the way, in the videos. All they can do now, that they have a little bit of freedom, that Israeli forces have backed off a little bit, is declare their commitment to killing more Israelis, to killing more Jews. This is why this was always a war against the Palestinians, not just a war against Hamas. So Hamas has resurfaced. It is reasserted, it's trying to reassert its control over the whole Gaza Strip. Is that doing so by murdering anybody who they believe might be in opposition to them, anybody who might be part of an opposition. And there's a lot of bloodshed right now in Gaza, and it does not involve Israelis. And because it does not involve Israelis, because it does not involve Jews killing Arabs, the world doesn't give a damn. Does not give a damn. All right. All right. That is it for talking about Israel and Hamas, unless you have questions. And of course, I will take any questions you have. So feel free to jump in. All right. Yeah, feel free to jump in. We've got an ambitious goal because I have a feeling we're going to go long today. But yeah, feel free to come in with any comments, questions, super chat. I always read all the super chats out loud. So if whatever you want to say and you want me to make public, put it in a super chat. Also, you can support the show by doing a sticker. A sticker is without a question, but it's an expression of support, value for value, a trade with me. You listen because you get some value from the show, I guess. Express that value by doing a sticker or a super chat. All right. Couple of Nobel Prizes that I think I don't comment on the Nobel Prizes on physics and biology and chemistry because I don't know anything about those fields. But I can comment on Nobel Prizes for peace, and I can comment on the Nobel Prize for economics because I know something about those. Let's start with the Nobel Prize for peace. The woman who got it, in Venezuela, I commented on this last week, is worthy. I mean, she is a real fighter for freedom, a fighter against an oppressive regime in Venezuela. She risks her life almost daily to try to bring change to Venezuela. She's also surprisingly willing to name socialism as the cause of Venezuela's problems. And to go after, not only after Maduro in his current incarnation, but to go after Chavez, the person who started all of this. She talks about the fact that Chavez inspired young people and young people supported him because he inspired them through socialism. But that socialism evolved in Venezuela as socialism evolves everywhere. And when people said at the time, yeah, but socialism is bad, look at Cuba, Chavez said what every socialist has been trained to say forever. Chavez said, oh, no. That's not real communism in Cuba. We'll do real socialism in Venezuela. Well, they did real socialism in Venezuela, and the results are exactly the same. Poverty, destruction, hunger, collapse of the economy. Remember, Venezuela sits on the largest oil reserves in the world, larger than Saudi Arabia's. They can't get anything out of the ground because they don't have the technological capacity to do it. Socialism. So, she is definitely worthy. And, I think that she deserves our congratulations. Maria Corina Machado. She's a real fighter for freedom. Venezuela is a horrific place, a horrible place. And, here's a real courageous woman that knows the evils of socialism and is willing to fight it. I wish all Nobel Peace Prizes went to such worthy candidates. Nobel Peace Prizes are usually a joke and have been jokes in the past. But this is an example of somebody worthy getting such a prize. Surprisingly, today, three people got the Nobel Prize for economics. And while I'm not in a position to tell you these are the most worthy people in the world out there to get it, I don't think that's true. They are worthy. Certainly, the one of them who I know his work is worthy. This is a good prize. This is a good selection. The committee granted the prize to economists working on the question of the relationship between innovation and economic growth, and the conditions under which innovation is successful, and it leads to the kind of economic growth that we see in the West. What drives that? Receiving the prize of Joel Markier, and I'm probably butchering his name, who is a very good economic historian. I have at least a couple of his books in the bookshelf behind me. Philip Aghion, and Peter Howard. Joel Markier is at Northwestern University. Philip Aghion is at the Collège de France in Instead, and also at the London School of Economics. And Peter Howard is at Brown University. I want to talk a little bit about their work, particularly Markier's work, which I think is particularly good. And again, whose books I've read and I think have inspired me. Let me just give me 1 second, because I had an article prepared here before I restarted the computer for this. So let me just find it 1 second before I go into it completely. Oh, God. Where is this? Maybe I didn't have to prepare it. All right. Yep, here it is. There's a good article today written by Brian Albert, who's a free market economist, who's quite good about them, and so I thought I'd read a little bit about what he says, and here's something he says that I agree with. He says the biggest question in economics is the hockey stick. For most of human history, living standard barely budged. Then something shifted. We got the hockey stick, that is, the massive increase in economic growth. Why did this happen? When did it happen? What made it possible? I mean, I think he's absolutely right. This is the most important, biggest question in economics. I would say broader than that. It's the most important question in the humanities. I mean, the human condition got dramatically better. Dramatically, not a little bit. Why? Most people have no clue. And yet, if we want to preserve the good state of humanity from a material perspective, we should understand how it actually happened. Now, Mark here gives a theoretical, historical explanation for this. I think it's incomplete, but it's pretty good. And then Agion and Howitt actually have created a model, mathematical model, in economics, I know, but some models are better than others, that shows how innovation actually drives growth when the kind of conditions that Mark here describes are met. So they actually mathematized the work, and most economic models today that look at growth, are economic models that are based on and reference the model that they created. So good for them. They created the model in 1992, and good for them. I have less to say about them because I don't do mathematical economics, so I'm not that familiar with the models. But I trust Albrecht in saying that, yeah, the work is good. It's a good foundation, if not, the complete set. All right. So let's talk about Mark here, because I encourage you to look at his books. I should look in the back and see. Let me do this. I'm going to pull up a list of his books and tell you which ones I recommend. Because I think they're worth reading if you're interested in this question, which I think everybody should be interested in. It's an important question. What led to the incredible success? And there are a number of people who've written good, interesting things. Deirdre McCluskey has done a lot of good work on this, but so is Mark here. Books. Oh God, what the hell is going on? All right, there we go. Oh, a culture of growth is my favorite. I encourage you to check it out. It's called a culture of growth: the origins of the modern economy. Culture of growth: the origins of a modern economy. And then he's got a book on the Enlightenment economy. The economy during the Enlightenment, how it came out of the Enlightenment. Generally, his thesis is it came out of the Enlightenment, and the Enlightenment was crucial. He's got a book on the British Industrial Revolution. A book called The Gifts of Athena. This is he's a good intellectual. He's one of the good guys out there worth actually checking out. Basically, what he does is he's thinking about, okay, how does innovation lead to growth? What are the steps that need to happen? And what he shows is that he thinks about this in terms of two types of knowledge. One type of knowledge, let's call it theoretical knowledge. It's a knowledge of the scientist. The theoretical basis. And a second type of knowledge is the knowledge of, call it the practical knowledge, at the applied level. He calls it prospective knowledge. Propositional knowledge is what he calls the more theoretical and abstract. So this is where the tool maker, the tinkerer, is constantly improving his machine or his tools or whatever it is that he's doing, right? So you've got theoretical knowledge up here, and you've got the info, and you've got the practical knowledge down here. And he says, really forever in human history, those two were separate. They didn't address one another. There was no relationship to one to the other. He says what makes the Enlightenment, the scientific revolution, and then the Industrial Revolution unique is for the first time in history, these two were integrated. Scientific knowledge was taken and then used in order to develop practical tools to enhance the tool making, the machine making. And this is absolutely true, right? And Ayn Rand talks about this. She talks about the creation of the businessman. And what does the businessman do? Call it the entrepreneur in our more modern language. What does the entrepreneur do? He takes the theoretical knowledge and he applies it to a practical problem and creates a business around it. And this is what makes the Industrial Revolution the Industrial Revolution. Now, I don't think that's the whole story, and you still need some other pieces in the chain of causality, but that's good. And of course, what is necessary for that to happen? Well, a certain intellectual culture needs to exist. A culture of ideas, a culture of debate, a culture of discussion. So here's again Brian Allbaugh writing about this from the perspective of what happened before, right? Before the Industrial Revolution. In that world, innovation was hit or miss and rarely cumulative. Many supposed breakthroughs were dead ends. The Industrial Revolution, I mean, he gives us an example of Leonardo da Vinci, who had all these innovations. They never went anywhere. Nobody ever read his stuff. He didn't communicate it with anybody. It was a dead end. A lot of his discoveries in mathematics, it took 200 years before other people discovered it. And another 100 years before people looked back and said, oh, Leonardo discovered this way back then. There was no communication. He writes, the Industrial Revolution became a true turning point only when propositional and perspective knowledge started reinforcing each other. This tightening feedback loop is what made growth sustained rather than one-off. In earlier eras, a brilliant invention might boost productivity temporarily, but without scientific foundation to build upon, the advance eventually stalled. But here's where it gets interesting. But Marquet goes deeper. Why did this feedback loop start in Europe around 1700? His answer is institutional. The Republic of Letters, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Republic of Letters, but I've talked about it a little bit on past shows, but the Republic of Letters was basically this informal network of Europe's intellectuals, primarily Europe and America, for example. Franklin participated actively. The Republic of Letters was basically hundreds, maybe a few thousand intellectuals writing to each other, critiquing each other's work. Ultimately, this led to the publication of journals and books, but it was letter writing and letter writing. Voltaire wrote thousands of letters. I'll go back to Brian. This was an early modern pan-European market for ideas. Low barriers to entry, peer criticism, prizes and journals for sharing discoveries, competition between scholars across different countries. And then the other thing is political disintegration. So he says, if one monarch shut down your research, you could move somewhere else and keep working. So Marquet talked about the Republic of Letters. It was a Europe-wide network where intellectuals shared ideas, tested theories, and developed standards for what counted as good science. Voltaire didn't just correspond with people in Paris. He exchanged letters with thinkers across England, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and even the United States. It created a hierarchy based on merit, not social status. Bad ideas got weeded out, good ideas spread. This is the Enlightenment. So he's giving credit for the Enlightenment for creating the conditions for the creation of the Industrial Revolution. He's absolutely right. He writes, this matters because in most societies throughout history, brilliant minds worked alone. Leonardo da Vinci was a genius, but he was isolated. Or innovators depended on royal patronage, which meant they could be silenced if they offended the wrong person. The Republic of Letters solved both problems. This happened first in Europe, which had a unique combination, cultural unity with political fragmentation. So this is all Marxist kind of theory. So this is really important stuff. And I mean, I really enjoyed A Culture of Growth because he describes the Enlightenment, and the Enlightenment is an amazing period of time. So this is the kind of analysis, philosophical, intellectual. I mean, it's not very deep philosophical, but at least recognizing the importance of the ideas, the importance of intellectuals, the importance of ideas and exchange of ideas and building on ideas. This is exactly the kind of work economists and intellectuals should be doing. So Marquez doing this work is crucially important, and he should be congratulated for it. And of course, the Nobel Prize committee recognizing this work and giving him a Nobel Prize, that is huge. So I'm really happy with this choice, and really happy with the fact that this is what happened. The Enlightenment is a period in which intellectuals marginalize Christianity. They put it to the side. They focus on reason-based arguments. They focus on reality. And therefore, they focus on facts, evidence, real intellectual pursuits. And by elevating reason, and as a consequence, elevating individualism, they make the Industrial Revolution possible. Now, those are not the terms Marquez would put it in, but his research supports that argument, which is Ayn Rand's argument, my argument, for the hockey stick. Hockey stick is reason plus individualism plus political freedom. That's what the hockey stick is. All right. So good Nobel Prizes. Got to give credit where credit is due. All right. China. We talked about this Friday, I think. China has clamped down, dramatically restricted, the availability and ability to use without permission their rare earth materials and magnets that they produce. This really has devastating impact potentially on many industries. But importantly, it has a devastating potential impact on the defense industry in the United States. So many weapon systems depend on rare earth materials, depend on magnets, depend on the kind of products and raw materials that China is now clamping down on controlling. And while China doesn't necessarily dominate the mining for these resources, it turns out they're rare earth materials pretty much everywhere. They're not that rare. What China dominates is the ability to refine them and produce them. Often the process of doing that is pretty dirty, so environmental laws have prevented that building of refining facilities, factories in the United States and in Europe. So the United States is completely dependent for these kind of materials on China. Give me a second. So China dramatically increasing restrictions on their use, on export, and not just exporting, but how they're used. So trying to control the entire supply chain after they're bought from them. This was a major escalation in kind of the trade war that's going on between the United States and China, just at a time when everybody, and particularly the markets, believed that the trade war was basically over, that Xi and Trump had made up, that they were going to meet in a couple of weeks in Asia, and that, as Trump has promised over and over and over again since April, a trade deal was imminent. Any day now, there'd be a trade deal with China. Well, we've been promised that over and over again. Hasn't happened. And now China's escalating. Well, the markets took a real beating on Friday. NASDAQ was down 3.5%. S&P was down more than 2%. Bitcoin was down a lot, and generally it was kind of a bloodbath in crypto. People panicked. People panicked not so much because of what China announced, but that what happened on Friday is that Trump said, as of November 1st, all tariffs on Chinese goods are going to 100%, an additional 100%, so back to the 135 that it was back in April, May. And we're going to have all kinds of other restrictions on software, on chips, and all these other things. In other words, a dramatic escalation of trade war. Market collapses or goes down a lot. Trump regrets, I guess, having said all that, because he doesn't like it when the market responds negatively to what he says. So over the weekend, Trump says, oh, yeah, no, it's not that bad. Listen, guys, we're going to have a deal. I promise, we'll do something, and we'll make it work. We'll make it happen. And, China will be fine. The market today is up. NASDAQ's up 2%. S&P 500 is 1.5%. So basically, returning most, if not all, but most of the losses from Friday. So the market is up and down based on whimsical statement by one way or the other by Donald Trump. It's pretty interesting the extent to which the market moves on any one of these things. Not clear how Trump is going to resolve these differences with China. Not clear what exactly is going on. Not clear what China did it when it did it. Is it just trying to strengthen its negotiating position going into the meeting between Xi and Trump? Is it trying to do something else? Are they just stupid? Probably not. In what way they're being strategic? Trump has walked us into all of this. He started a trade war without really a plan of how to get out of the trade war. He has made, this a massive issue when it didn't need to be a massive issue. He also threw America into this trade war with China before America was really prepared, before we had accumulated the rare earth minerals to protect ourselves from restrictions by the Chinese, before we had built the facilities, whether in the United States or in friendly countries, to replace the Chinese supply of magnets and things like that. So a real lack of strategy from Trump, which is not surprising. It shouldn't surprise anybody. Real lack of strategy in terms of thinking through, if you're going to engage, if you want to separate from China, if you want to de-link from China, if you want to get American manufacturers to stop relying on China, you got to do it smart. And this administration has not done it smart, and as a consequence, we're seeing this up and down craziness. We'll see where it goes. It's not over. They haven't resolved any of this. And we'll see if the trade war escalates or gets better. We'll see if Trump can cut a deal with the Chinese or not. We'll see how far the Chinese want to go in terms of pushing the Americans and trying to get their way. So the markets are going to be volatile in the next few weeks until we get some kind of semblance of a resolution to the China trade issue, to tariffs, to trade restrictions, to the whole package. And of course, there's those soybeans in the background, soybeans the Chinese are not buying. And it appears that once the government shutdown is over, Trump will do a massive bailout of American farmers to compensate them for the fact that the Chinese are boycotting their soybeans. Okay, I think that is the news for this Monday, October 13th, the day where the last 20 live hostages that Hamas was keeping were released, where Israel released 2,000 Palestinians, Hamas terrorists and Hamas supporters. And where, I didn't mention Donald Trump speaking in front of the Israeli parliament today, in front of the Knesset, rambling on for an hour. It was quite a show, not so much as a speech as a show. But in the meantime, as we said, Hamas is still alive and well, and we'll see how it all works out. All right. Let's move to your questions. Let's move to the super chat. I'll remind you we have goals. We met the 1 hour goal fairly quickly and early on, but we are now definitely onto the second hour. And it would be great to meet the second hour goal, maybe even the third hour goal, because we might slip into a third hour. We do have a lot of questions. So please consider asking a question, using the super chat, asking a question or making a comment or challenging me on something. We could also, you could also support the show with a sticker. That's another way, you being here live. We've got 170 people on live on YouTube right now. You being on live, you can show support for the show with a sticker, and we can make our targets. Targets are important. Reaching those targets is important. So please consider showing your support for the show with a sticker. I'll remind you that we have a number of sponsors. The Ayn Rand Institute sponsors the show, and they want to remind you that the Atlas Shrugged essay contest is about to end. That is, you have to submit the essay by October 31st, by the end of this month. You can find information about the question you have to answer, the length of the essay, who qualifies and who doesn't to submit an essay. You can find all that information out on aynrand.org/start here, aynrand.org/start here. $25,000 first prize. That is pretty juicy. That should be an incentive to submit an essay, so I hope you do. Anyway, go ahead, submit an essay, and participate. But check out to make sure you're qualified and what the conditions are. Aynrand.org/start here. Alex Epstein, the number one thinker, activist with regard to energy and climate change, and a lot of our kind of mining policy, so environmentalism. And if you're really interested in why we're not mining for rare earth material, check out Alex Epstein's Substack, alexepstein.substack.com, where he's written about the different laws restricting mining, the environmental regulations, and making it impossible to mine in this country, and to build the kind of industrial facilities that would allow us to extract the chemicals that we need to extract from the mine material. So check out Alex, the best thinker out there in the world about these things, alexepstein.substack.com. And finally, Hendershot Wealth, Hendershot with 2 T's, hendershotwealth.com/YBS, the Yaron Brook Show. And they have financial advisors who have a product that can help save you a lot of money on capital gains taxes. And you can check them out on a video I did with Robert Hendershot, where we discuss all these different ways in which you can save money on capital gains taxes. So check it out. It's on my playlists under under sponsors. It's with Robert Hendershot. It's a good video. It's a fun discussion, even if you're not interested specifically in this. I think you'll enjoy it. But if you are, check him out and then go to hendershotwealth.com/YBS to get more information, to sign up, to have a conversation with him. All right, and finally, please consider supporting the Yaron Brook Show on Patreon, patreon.com, Yaron Brook Show. It'd be great to have you. It'd be great to get more support, particularly for those of you who might be able to do significant amounts on a monthly basis, $100, $250, $500. It would be great to have you supporting the show, make it much easier, predictable in terms of finances, in terms of the money coming in. These are a commitment to monthly contributions, which are great. So patreon.com or PayPal, and just search Yaron Brook Show and become a monthly supporters. Thank you. All right, let's jump in. To our super chats, and don't forget, you too can participate in the super chats and can participate in supporting the show by doing a sticker or asking a question. Right now, we are still, $123 away from our. Sorry, no. What am I talking about? Yeah, 100. Anyway, we're $120 something away from our 2-hour goal. So please consider doing that. We're on our second hour already, and we're going to keep going. And of course, we're going to have a show tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday. So please consider supporting the Yaron Brook Show. All right, Durowski, $50. Thank you, Durowski. Really, really appreciate that. He says, "Happy Columbus Day. Had to write it in with a typo." That's right, because YouTube does not like Columbus Day. YouTube was forcing me to edit it. Thank you. Yes, happy Columbus Day. I didn't talk about Columbus Day. I probably should have. But yes, I'm a big fan of Columbus Day. Columbus himself might not have been a nice guy, but he was an important guy, a guy who changed history and who brought civilization to this part of the world. I don't understand celebrating indigenous people. There's nothing really to celebrate there. There's no real great values that they created, great culture that they created. Columbus brought civilization. Now, that civilization didn't always behave very well, very nicely in the New Americas, but it was the beginning. It was the beginning of something phenomenal, which is the United States of America and all these Latin American countries, and the success and the wealth and the prosperity that they've created at whatever level it exceeds what those indigenous cultures had. Jonathan, thank you for the sticker. Stephen Harper, thank you for the sticker. So thank you, guys. And again, you too can support the show with a sticker. Mary Aline, Gail, thank you for the stickers. And let's see, who did I miss? I think I've got everybody. So you too can do just $2, $1, $5, $10, $20, $50, anything, and it really, really helps, and it really helps support the show. The show is supported, made possible from contributions by people like you. All right, Liam, is anything Trump's doing helping the stock market? Or is this only a matter of the right place, right time? Well, I think it's a combination. So I think that some of the deregulation that he's doing is helping the stock market. Certainly the passage of laws, for example, a bill, what was it, the Genius Bill, that created is going to create a whole market in stable coins and provided some visibility into the regulation of crypto. I think his commitment not to regulate, AI, the fact that there are so many tech guys in the administration kind of shielding the tech industry from regulations and controls, shielding them, for example, from tariffs, all of that is helping the stock market. There's no question. But he's also in the right time and the right place. That is, much of the stock market growth Much of the economic growth happening right now is happening because of the massive investments. I mean, trillions of dollars of investment into AI and into AI data centers. That is not because of Trump. That would have happened anyway. But he is giving it more space by promising not to regulate. So he's partially responsible, and a lot of it is right place, right time. Alex, $50. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate you so much. You do amazing. Thank you. Really appreciate that, Alex. That is incredibly helpful. All right, guys, we're under $100 in terms of the amount of money needed to make our second hour goal. So we're just short $96. So please, more $20 questions, maybe a couple of 50s, and we're there. It's not going to take a lot to get us where we need to be, but yeah, stay on it. Don't forget. And don't forget to like the show before you leave and chat here and put comments underneath. Any interaction is good for the algorithm, and we want the algorithm to like the show. James, since the hostages are being returned safely, should Israel violate the ceasefire and blitzkrieg Hamas, have the self-esteem to ignore Trump and international pressure and crush the enemy once and for all? Yeah, I mean, certainly they should. But of course, they should have done that October 8th. Why wait till today? But yeah, they should. But they won't. I mean, they're not going to ignore Trump. Whatever they do, they will get a green light from him. We'll see how much they do. We'll see how far they go. I don't think they're going to sit in their hands either. I don't think they're just going to pretend Hamas has changed and everything's fine. I think they're going to use the fact that Hamas refuses to disarm to actually go in there and do more, at least maybe not finish the job, but at least use air power to reduce Hamas's capabilities dramatically. And I think that's the plan. I don't think the plan is to go in on foot, but I think the plan is to use air power to reduce their capabilities dramatically. And I think that'll probably happen, and I think it'll probably get a green light from Trump. Hopper Campbell, part 1. You said a mother who births a crack baby should be charged with child abuse. Isn't this a pro-life argument? It implies a fetus has rights, and any damage you inflict on a fetus during pregnancy, you're liable for. According to Objectivism, you only have rights once you're an individuated human being. You should only be charged with child abuse for the abuse you cause a child after it has passed through the child canal. No, I don't think that's true. I think that's a misreading of the objectivist position. The reality is that once the mother chooses to have the baby, to give birth, then the behavior she exhibits towards it and the damage she does to it, she's liable for. I mean, it's also true, for example, that if somebody murders a pregnant woman, and she's a pregnant woman not on the way for an abortion, but a pregnant woman who wants to carry to term, that should be taken into account. Because the woman has chosen to have the baby. So once you choose that, and you don't change your mind, because in this case, she's had the baby, she didn't have an abortion before, then you're responsible for your behavior leading up to the birth. The fact that it didn't have rights when it was a fetus, it doesn't. It has rights when it's born. And when it's born, it's damaged. And it's being damaged by the behavior of somebody towards it when it didn't have rights. But once the choice to birth it, you take responsibility for what you're doing to it. You're responsible for it. So I think you have to think about, is she intending to carry the baby to term or not? The fetus to term or not? And yeah, if she has an abortion, it doesn't matter what she did. If she has a child, it does matter. Andrew, an intellectual TV pundit said, Israelis don't have an excuse not to know about the suffering of the Gazans, similar to regular Germans knowing of the Nazis' atrocities. What the hell is she talking about in comparing the two? Well, I mean, she's comparing the two. You know, she's basically arguing that Israel, in defending itself, is doing the same thing, even though it's trying not to kill civilians and really making an effort, as the Nazis in the concentration camps, consciously killing, because they want to whitewash the difference. It's the powerful over the unpowerful. That's the only thing that matters. The powerful killing those who don't have power. That's the only thing that matters. The motivation, the actual way of doing it, whether there's actually mass killing of civilians, all of that is irrelevant. It's power. It's all about power. That's the modern left. The modern left only cares about relative power. Who has power relative to whom? That's how you judge everything. If the powerful are doing something, it must be bad. If the powerful are inflicting pain, then, yeah, Nazis were powerful, Israel's powerful, they're both evil. They're both bad. That's the only way they think about these things. But that is a disgusting, horrific statement that you know, whoever that TV pundit is should be absolutely boycotted. Catherine, why is there so much anti-Semitism from the left? Why are their protests this big in Western countries against Israel full of communists? Is this only a current situation, or did this happen in the past? Very scary people. I mean, I've talked about this a lot over the last few years. I mean, this is a direct consequence of what's being taught at universities. The whole what's called the woke agenda, the post-colonialism studies and the intersectionality and, you know, the identity politics. It's all part of the same thing. It's the secularization of Christian altruism and the taking of altruism really, really, really seriously. And what does altruism teach us? Well, the virtuous, the good are the meek. Those who are powerless. And the bad, the evil, those you should take from are the successful, the rich, the prosperous. You know, this is in Marx. From each according to his ability, to each according to his means. It's in the Bible. It's in the New Testament. It's in Sermon on the Mount. And it's very, 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 very much in postmodern humanities courses across the board. And what this basically teaches kids is, if there are people who are successful, if there's a group, because everything's about groups, everything's about identity politics, if there's a group out there that is successful and strong and wealthy and happy, then they must be evil. They must be the bad guys. And Jews generally are pretty successful. And Jews in Israel are very successful. Israel as a country is very successful. Therefore, they must be the bad guys. And they're beating up on these powerless people, these people who don't have weapons, don't have wealth, have not been successful. They must be the virtuous. I did a show a long time ago on intersectionality. This is straight out of intersectionality. You rank people's virtue based on how failed they are. The more failed, the more virtuous. The more successful, the more evil. And that's the modern left. That is ultimately woke ideology. And that's what you're seeing. So that's what you're seeing out there. Michael says, even Richard Dawkins thinks the Sermon on the Mount is beautiful. Richard Dawkins has adopted Christian morality. Richard Dawkins, you know, this is I think the main failure of the new atheists is that they've all basically adopted Christianity as the moral code and won't challenge that. So they challenge Christianity in epistemological and metaphysical grounds, but not on moral grounds. And that is a massive mistake. So, we are here to fix that. Try to fix it anyway. Try to improve on it. All right, Irrational IP. What do you think of horror and science fiction? Do they fit within objectivist views or not? Yeah, I mean, I think they do. I don't like horror. But, you know, it's certainly both horror and science fiction can be arts. They can be great arts. They can show the metaphysical value judgments of their creators, producers, makers, and I think they often do very well. I think science fiction is definitely art. It's an amazing canvas you can have with science fiction, because it basically allows you to create the world that you put characters into. So science fiction can be romantic. I think even horror can be romantic as long as the good guys win in the end. But horror is, for example, a medium that can put the hero into situations and positions where they have to be heroic, they have to use reason, they have to use their mind in order to solve problems, in order to win in the end. Right? Most horror is not very good. Most horror is awful. And most horror is very malevolent. But that doesn't mean it's not art. I think there's a lot of science fiction that is excellent. And it absolutely conforms to Ayn Rand's views on art. Some of it's romantic, some of it's naturalistic, some of it's good, some of it's mediocre, some of it's bad, just like in every genre. So there's nothing about these genres that would exclude them from the realm of art. I mean, The Shining is brilliantly made, for example. It's a brilliantly made horror movie. I don't like it. I don't want to watch it again. It's got a real malevolence to it. It's got a real nastiness to it. So it does not reflect my sense of life. But that doesn't diminish its qualities, core art, which I think it's probably good. Yeah, and there are lots of good examples of science fiction. Aliens, particularly Aliens, the second Aliens, the one that James Cameron made, is excellent. I think thematically and exciting, and also a horror movie, but with a good theme in the end. All right, I really only like the second one. I think all the others have a darkness to them. The second one doesn't. The James Cameron one doesn't. I think all the other ones are pretty malevolent and dark and not good, and heroism is undermined. The second one, there's no undermining the heroism, and the heroism is she's a thinker. She's a woman who looks at reality and uses her mind. All right. If you want to ask me about specific movies, you can do a $2 super chat. We are $24 short of our 2-hour goal. So $24. Somebody should be able to do $24 to get us through. Oh, I did notice Wes came in with $50. Thank you, Wes. Again, almost every day. Thank you. Really appreciate that. He always comes in and gets us so much closer to our goal. So now we're only $24 away. Somebody could come in with a $20 question, get a couple of $2 stickers, and we're all done, guys. So please consider supporting the show and getting us over the target. Remo says, which Horatio Alger book do you recommend I read? You know, I can't remember their names. And generally, they're all very similar. So I don't know if they're ones that really stand out as much better. I wouldn't know, but I just pick up one. Just read any one of them. They're just fun reads. Remo, any specific thoughts on the recent EA Sports deal? It's the biggest LBO ever. LBO leverage buyouts ever, another Saudi and Jared Kushner deal. Yeah, I mean, it seemed like a rich price It's not clear where the benefits of going private are. But again, I'm not an expert. These people are putting real money. They've got skin in the game. I don't. So I don't know. Is it greater efficiency somewhere? Are they seeing something where an untapped market that they can tap? They have a unique skill to tap. Are they going to use this to roll up and add other companies? What exactly is the business model? I don't know. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means I don't know. So big leverage buyouts. You expect leverage buyouts to keep growing because valuations are growing, partially because of inflation and partially because the market is up. I generally think that leverage buyouts make sense because people have to pay back that debt, and it really focuses the mind when you have a lot of money on the table that you have to pay back. So they must have a strategy of how to get out of this. Must have a strategy. All right, thank you, Remo. Michael, if the Democrats win big in the midterm, will Trump actually work with them to expand more socialist and fascist policies? We will transform into a one-party soft dictatorship. Well, I think we're already somewhat of a soft dictatorship. We've still got the courts holding us back, but I think to a large extent we are already there. I don't know if the Democrats will work with Trump. I don't think so. I think there'll be a lot of animosity. I think they'll try to impeach him. I think it'll go back and forth. So I don't really expect the Democrats and Republicans to work together into a kind of a uni-political party, but with Trump. Thought Criminal says 8 wars. I'm not sure what 8 wars means. 8 wars ? Anybody know what that means? 8 wars. Yeah, maybe you can clarify what you mean in the chat. I'll try to read it. All right. Not your average algorithm. A reliable way to make people believe in falsehoods is frequent repetition. Yes, I've talked about that often. Familiarity is not easily distinguished from truth. Authoritarian institutions have always known this. Yes. I mean, this has happened over and over and over again over the years. The left told us these economic stories that are completely untrue about wages and everything. They just repeat them, and everybody just believes them. The right has done the same thing with immigration, and now with tariffs. I mean, everybody's convinced now that tariffs are a good thing, mainly just because of repetition and to some extent mindlessness. Yes, I think that I think that is absolutely right. Repetition is a way to kind of condition people to think that something is true, even when it is not, even when it clearly is not. And both left and right have perfected it. And you're right, authoritarians have always known this. Rand, thank you, $50. Really appreciate that, Rand. Great to listen to a show with 2 out of 4 major topics that are essentially positive. It would be nice if reality were consistently 50% positive. Well, I mean, reality is more than 50% positive. I mean, let's remember that, right? Every day, good stuff is happening. Every day, somebody's starting a business. Every day, an amazing new restaurant is opening somewhere. Every day, there is a new entrepreneur starting up a new business, trying to solve another problem. There's a scientist somewhere figuring out how to how to cure cancer or whatever. So every day, the good news outnumbers the bad news. It's just a lot of little good news and big bad news. The bad news dominates because it's big and it's in politics, and we all know about it. The good news is in our personal lives, in the economic world, in the tech world, in places like that, and it's hard to keep up. And it's all small, so it's not clear that it's newsworthy. So just remember, the fact that I don't do 50-50 every day doesn't mean it's not overwhelmingly positive out there at the end of the day. Rand, thank you. Let's see. I am committed to trying to find more positives and spending more time on the positives. Not your average algorithm. Did Hamas release the hostages because they can't sustain living like rats under tunnels? It's easier to give the hostages back and seek diplomatic immunity or to rebuild their forces. I think they needed, I think they, look, I know that Trump gets all the credit for this, but really the credit goes to Israel, and to the fact that it was willing to penetrate into Gaza City and penetrate into Gaza and give Hamas a sense that this was it, that they were coming after them and they were going to destroy them. And I think, Hamas figured releasing the hostages buys them a little time. They can kill their enemies now. They can regroup. They can rearm. Maybe through diplomatic measures and the so-called peace deal, they can indefinitely hold the Israelis back. But I think they got a sense, and the attack in Qatar gave them that sense, and the attack in Gaza gave them a sense that this was it. Israel was serious. They were coming after them. And so they decided to stop for now, temporarily, and to get a breather. So it is hard to sustain life in tunnels, particularly when you know the enemy's closing it and closing it. And look, this is to Netanyahu's credit. Israel went into Gaza in spite of massive opposition inside Israel. People who wanted the Israeli government to compromise by all means to release the hostages. And Netanyahu said, no, the only way to release the hostages is to put more pressure on Hamas. And he was right. He was right. Credit where credit's due. All right. Linda says, Trump is only pro-Trump. How dare he take any pleasure in this? Yeah, I mean, Trump loves all the attention. He loves that he gets credited with this deal. He loves being portrayed in the world as a peacemaker. He loves the fact that he got the attention of the Knesset. He's a real narcissist. I mean, he's a real narcissist. He stood in front of the Knesset and talked for an hour and riffed and was funny and entertaining, as he always is in these talks, and ridiculous and absurd, as he always is in these talks. Now he's in Egypt riffing and roasting all these European leaders and Arab leaders. I mean, roasting is not the right word, but just riffing. Trump is Trump. Trump is narcissistic Trump. Nothing changes in that sense. 8 wars is Trump says he's ended 8 wars. Yeah, I mean, Trump will keep saying that. It's his claim to fame. He's big on it. But has he ended 8 wars? It's not really. Did he really end the Thai-Cambodia war? Was that really a war? Was that going to become a war? Unlikely that he played a decisive role there. Did he end the India-Pakistan? India doesn't give him any credit. The Pakistanis do, because the Pakistanis are sucking up to Trump like there's no tomorrow. But did he end that war? No, I doubt it. Did he end this war? The war with Hamas? It's not ended yet. So maybe he will. Maybe the peace deal will end the war. But he hasn't ended it yet, so we're not. He shouldn't be ready to celebrate peace for 3,000 years, although he is. So, yeah. I mean, he's gonna claim all kinds of stuff that is doubtful, is real or accurate, but it doesn't matter. It's like repeating the lies we talked about earlier. If you repeat something and over and over and over again, everybody believes it's true. Everybody thinks now he's a peacemaker. Whether it's true or not, it's hard to tell without having insight into what actually happened behind the scenes. Andrew, there's a demeaning implication in altruism. Do human beings essentially need help? Is the individual helpless? How do you think a serious altruist would react if you told him to leave others alone and focus on his own life? I think he would really dramatically object. He would say that would make him immoral. That would be selfish. That would take away any meaning and purpose he might have in life. Meaning and purpose is to be found outside of you, not inside of you. So yeah, I mean, I think he would really be upset. I don't think he'd be supportive or positive about it at all. It's not about helplessness. It's about the outside orientation, the orientation towards other, right? It could be towards God, who's not helpless, but you need a sacrifice to God. Why does God need your sacrifices? That's for another day. But the reality is that the one thing altruism is uniform about, you don't matter. You don't count. You do not deserve to get attention from yourself consistently. So it's very self-demeaning. It's the whole essence of it. Paul says, was Venezuela the model for Latin American mines Francisco D'Anconi invested in to lose his wealth, causing the mucha second-hander to lose their ill-gotten wealth and dramatically speeded up the collapse? And Atlas shrugged. Well, I don't see how. I mean, Venezuela was a completely different country in the 1950s and 40s. I think that the model was the mines in Chile. Chile is a very rich mining country, and I think that's where Francisco comes from. So, and Mexico has mines. I don't think Venezuela played any part in that at all. I don't know much about Venezuela of the 40s and 50s, when Ayn Rand was writing Atlas Shrugged. It certainly wasn't what it is today. This is a modern phenomenon. Chavez came to power in the 90s, I think. All right, Clark. On a positive note, I'm looking less and less. It's looking less and less that Mamdani will win New York City. Will Cuomo be a pro-business mayor? Oh wow! I mean, I haven't heard anybody be optimistic about that. Almost everybody I've heard is saying that Mamdani's a shoo-in. So it would be really good if you're right. I very much hope. I haven't seen the latest polls. Cuomo will be just a regular mayor. I mean, he'll be corrupt, and he'll probably want to appease the people who invite him to good parties, and so I think he'll just be middle of the road, nothing. I think Adams has been a fairly good mayor, has deployed a lot of police, and let's hope that the main thing that a mayor should do is make sure the police is functioning right and make sure crime is down. Let's hope that Cuomo does that. I don't know. Benjamin, thank you. He's certainly for the sticker. He's certainly better than Mamdani. So pretty much anybody's better than Mamdani. So I'm really happy if you're right in that Mamdani's not going to win. That would be huge. I'm actually debating a socialist just a few days after the election. It'd be a lot easier for me to debate him if Mamdani loses. Okay, Liam, part one. I lived in South Korea. The government is far less stable and more corrupt than MAGA. Yet there are new skyscrapers going up, luxury sports cars on the roads, great restaurants and malls. A pinch of freedom has a strong propellant force towards prosperity, even in the face of corruption and instability. Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. But it's also true, South Korea, I don't know if they're more corrupt than MAGA. I don't know. But as far as I know, South Korea does not have civilian-dressed, armed police, I guess you call them, armed individuals in unmarked cars rounding people up in the streets and throwing them in the back of vans. And South Korea leaves people mostly alone when it comes to business and when it comes to entrepreneurs and when it comes to things like that. So so I think that's why it's done well, even when the political class is very corrupt and there's a lot of political instability. You don't need, what you need is basically to leave people alone. Michael, A part of me thinks Trump's people are trying to provoke a crisis that allows him to claim emergency powers so he can become dictator. Well, I don't think it's for him to become dictator, but there's no question, in my view, that they're trying to provoke a crisis. They're trying to have riots in Portland. They don't have enough riots in Portland, so they're trying to instigate riots in Portland so they can send out the police. Now, it's not for him to become dictator. He's not going to become dictator, but it's to grow executive power, to show the left, to flex muscles. They thrive on that. And to take more and more and more power, to take more and more and more power. Anne says, can I just say I'm bugged by Lieberich and others getting invited to Leonard's birthday party, seemingly based on how unquestioning they are on his situation. There's no question there, and I'm not going to respond, so I appreciate you being bugged. All right, Christos. Sadly, I don't think the West should be described as moral anymore being not far away from a dictatorship and words matter. It should be described as less immoral than the rest of the world. Well, no. I mean, I still think there is a significant difference between the West and the rest of the world. There's a significant difference between Germany and Russia and between France and China from a perspective of freedom. And so maybe they're less moral, but I certainly think the West is still better than the rest of the world from a moral perspective. It's declining, and that should be pointed out. And it's becoming less Western in that sense. For example, I often say we're all China now because we're becoming more like China and less Western. But the West is still better. It's still holding on with fingernails, barely, but it's still holding on. Kim says, loved the prenup and marriage video, but would have liked more tips, especially for long-term success. Yeah, I mean, we'll do more of that. We'll do more of that. So I'll do another show on tips on marriage and how to keep it going. But yeah, thanks, Kim. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Justin, has Bibi exceeded your expectation? Were you wrong? Yeah, he's definitely exceeded my expectation. No question about that. Was I wrong? I guess I was. A lot of things that Bibi did ultimately took him much longer than it should have, that I didn't think he would do. I didn't think he had the balls to do it, and I didn't think he was decisive enough to do it, and he ultimately did it. I think he was helped along by a lot of other factors. And it took him, as I said, much longer than it should have. But ultimately, yeah, what they did to Hezbollah in Lebanon and what they did to Iran exceeded my expectations. I did not think that Bibi would launch that. So, yes, I was wrong. Justin, why is Trump so irrational when it comes to most issues, but very rational when it comes to Israel? No, I think Trump is completely irrational when it comes to Israel. You cannot decide on rationality based on whether the outcome is one you like or not. You have to look at method. And there's no method to his liking of Israel. I think politically, he believes that Israel is a topic that is a strength of his. I think partially that's because he's got some people around him that are very pro-Israel, whether it's Hegseth because of his evangelical roots, or whether it's Rubio, who's always been pro-Israel, or whether it's Kushner, who's Jared Kushner, who was part of his first administration, was partly responsible here, who's very pro-Israel and of course is married to Trump's daughter, and she converted to Judaism. So he has a certain personal inclination to be pro-Israel, but he goes back and forth between rational and irrational. Do this, but don't do that. Stop here. Why did they stop the war with Iran when they stopped the war with Iran? That was irrational. Why Even this deal. Why was this deal struck when it was struck? Why didn't he let Israel finish the job on Hamas? We'll see what happens in the next few weeks. Over and over again, there being this playing both sides and changing his mind. And so he's been decent in Israel. He's been better than he's in Israel than in other things. I think because it's a topic he cares about from way back, and he's surrounded by people who seem to care about this topic. But I don't think he's rational. It's just that his emotions here are aligned with what is right, which doesn't always happen. Thomas, I read 1984 and was disappointed. George Orwell's view of humanity, Winston, is one that is fearful and pragmatic. Your thoughts on the ending book? Yeah, I mean, the book is very malevolent. It basically provides us with no hope. Winston, in the end, is a dead end. He can't get out of it. It's sad. Yeah, in that sense, it's very disappointing, but not very surprising. I don't think Orwell understood where where the individual gets what he gets to liberate himself. He didn't understand the role of reason and individualism. He was a collectivist at the end of the day. Remember, Orwell was a socialist. Justin, AI advocated for an invasion of Iran after 9/11, but it now seems that Iran is nearing collapse without significant external intervention. Yeah, and we said that at the time. I've always said Iran will ultimately collapse. But why wait? 9/11 was what, 25 years ago? Why wait 25 years? And also, why? I mean, think about it. If Iran had been toppled after 9/11, there'd never been ISIS. The war in Afghanistan and Iraq would have gone completely differently, particularly in Afghanistan. Hamas would have never gained the kind of clout and influence that it gained. There would have never been October 7th. Thousands of people would still be alive that are not alive. And by the way, we never advocated for invading Iran. We advocating for taking out the Iranian regime. As you saw with Israel in 12 days, it didn't invade. And yet it almost toppled the regime. And imagine what the United States could do with planes and cruise missiles and an aggressive, prolonged attack on the regime. The regime would have collapsed, and the Iranians would have had 25 years of freedom, and we would have had 25 years of a lot less terrorist activity, a lot less terrorist engagement. So why not? Is the real question, particularly if you didn't have to have boots in the ground. And I never thought you needed boots in the ground in Iran. Thomas, I'm listening to the book We by Zamyatin and am confused by the point the author is making with their main character. Is he trying to say purely logical people gravitate towards authoritarianism? I'm not familiar with the book, but I wouldn't be surprised. Yes, I mean, that's the argument being made all the time, that reason and logic leads to authoritarianism. Most of the Christians today, Christian conservatives, the national conservatives, all make that argument, that Marx was the epitome of the Enlightenment. He was the consequence of reason, and that reason leads to authoritarianism, which is a complete fallacy. But a lot of people believe that, even some libertarians. Justin, have you seen The Brutalist? Is it objectivist? I have not seen The Brutalist, but I can tell you this without any question, even not seeing it, it is not objectivist. Islam Ali, how much credit does Trump deserve for this peace deal? And what caused it to happen so quickly? It seemed to have happened overnight. It didn't happen overnight. It took a week or so. But first of all, there's no peace yet. And there's no deal yet. There's an outline for a deal, and there's this first phase. But the second phase is the difficult one, where Hamas disarms and somebody else takes control of Gaza and all of that. And that hasn't happened yet, and I don't know if it's going to happen. So first, let's put it in perspective. Trump gets some credit for it, for getting particularly the Arab states in line to put pressure on Hamas. But I don't think any of that would have happened if Israel hadn't bombed Doha, hadn't bombed Qatar. I also, Trump is very good at leveraging what other people want from him. Turkey wants F-35s. The Egyptians want more security guarantees. The Saudis want something. And he's good at leveraging that. He doesn't care about actually, he's fine with giving the Turks F-35s if they do what he wants. Everything's transactional with him. So he manipulated the transactions to get the Arab world behind it. That's his big contribution. Everything else, and the reason it happened so quickly, is because of the military pressure Israel was putting on Hamas. Brownie, is the Daily Wire doing an Atlas Shrugged series? There was talk about that a year and two ago. I haven't heard anything new. I don't really have any new information. So my answer is I don't know. I'm not sure if the Daily Wire is doing an Atlas Shrugged TV series or not. I don't have any new information about that. My guess is not, but that's just a guess. Thomas, I was arguing with a friend about art, literature, as a hierarchy of what is considered good. I argued good theme and good skill, bad theme and good skill, and good theme and bad skill. Thoughts? Yeah, I think that's right. Best is good theme and good skill. Next, qua art, is bad theme but good skill. Bad is bad philosophy. And the worst, and almost the worst, is a good theme and bad skill. That's terrible, because then the good theme gets, it's not art. And then the worst, of course, is bad theme and bad skill. But yes, I agree with that. Absolutely. Art is art, no matter what the theme is. And you've got to judge the art based on the art. Art is not subjective at all. The quality of art is objective. You've got to, but then the question is, do you have the knowledge to be able to make an objective assessment of the art? And that very few people have. But, the way to evaluate art is not to evaluate it based on the theme. It's evaluated based on its qualifying to be art qua art. Is it doing what art's supposed to do? And how well is it doing it? Whatever the theme happens to be. Jacob, any comments on science fiction elements in Atlas Shrugged? I think it illustrates well the potential of science that is with written metal and more out there the motor. Well, and the shield, the thing that makes them invisible. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to really think of those things as science fiction because they're so rooted in this world. But yeah, I don't think there's any issue with using science fiction. Science fiction is a great tool. I think she wouldn't view it as science fiction because it's basically things that are expanding out based on existing knowledge. And new metal is not crazy. I mean, people inventing new metals today. A perpetual motion machine is more sci-fi. A shield that makes them that protects the valley, that's tech that probably exists today. So, I mean, it's the elements of science fiction that enhance the story, and I think that's completely legit. And shows, it also illustrates for her the potential of science, the potential of the human mind, part of the theme of Atlas Shrugged. Justin says, please invite more guests. Salieri would be great. Salieri would be great. I will. I can't do the interviews while I'm traveling, and I'm going to be traveling a lot. Once I stop traveling, I will invite guests. So as I did in the past, I will continue to do. Andrew, Trump and the libertarians have in common that they consider peace as a value regardless of context. Yeah, I think that's right. I think the libertarians are worse because there's a nihilism for the libertarians with regard to peace, and I don't think Trump quite has that. I think the libertarians are more intellectual, more sophisticated than he is. So I think they're worse. All right, guys. Thank you to all the super chatters. Really, really appreciate it. The Yaron Brook Show will be back with another news show tomorrow. So I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great rest of your week. Bye, everybody. And again, thank you for all the super chatters. Thank you for all the stickers. Thank you for everybody that's watching. Don't forget to like the show before you. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Please, please, please click that subscribe button and you'll be notified every time I go live. It doesn't cost you anything. All right, guys. Have a great